What happens when people turn things around on the scammer? Let's get the ball rolling with number 5, his own money hostage. One man in Lebanon robbed a bank to get his own money, and his story is sadly becoming commonplace. Abdallah Al-Saii, sitting on around $50,000 in deposits with his local bank, had become frustrated with the strict $200 monthly withdrawal allowance imposed since the nation's economic collapse in 2019. After watching his balance dwindle due to fees and his family get by with barely any access to their money, he had enough. Al-Saii made a pit stop at the cemetery to pray over his mother's grave. He knew he was about to take a huge risk. He made another pit stop at a local gas station. After that, Al-Saii and his father made their way to the bank. He brought a gun, along with 2 cans of gas and a lighter. Once he made it to the bank, Al-Saii almost didn't go through with his plan. He saw some children who had entered the bank with their parents and didn't want to put them through what he was about to do. He waited for the kids to leave, then made his move. Al-Saii followed the bank manager into an office. He didn't state his threat, but he didn't have to. He made a show of having the gas and lighter at the ready as he asked for what was his. You'd think the bank manager would back down at this point, but he tried to meet Al-Saii in the middle. He offered to cut an immediate check for $10,000. When the offer got turned down, the bank manager went to his superiors. Negotiations went out of control. Al-Saii snapped when he heard people trying to get his own brother to arrest him. The brother worked for what's essentially Lebanon's equivalent to the FBI, which means things had gotten pretty extreme at this point. Al-Saii started to scream at the top of his lungs and fling gasoline all over the office. He openly threatened to light the bank up with himself, police, bank employees, and other customers all in it. Finally, bank officials caved and gave him his own $50,000. He called his wife, handed the money over to her, and was arrested. Al-Saii was ultimately released and even got to keep the money. He spent 17 days in jail. Part of that was spent not eating. He went on a hunger strike after orders were passed down to hunt for his wife and confiscate the money. Luckily, she left their kids with their parents and made a run for it. The family isn't out of the woods yet. Al-Saii is currently free on $200,000 bail, but he'll eventually have to go back to court. All of this drama didn't come about at once. It was born of a long standoff between Al-Saii and the bank. For starters, he had originally deposited about $400,000 in his account. The massive deposit, proceeds from the sale of a family property, were supposed to help Al-Saii with a business opportunity. In his wife's native Colombia, Al-Saii had his hands in a car wash business that was starting up. With just a few suppliers left to pay, his money got tied up and the deal fell through. Taking out bigger chunks by check to get around the direct withdrawal limit has its own limitations. As if to counter all the bank's fees you're escaping by taking out your own money, the institution charged over 20%. This is where a lot of the original deposit amount went. Al-Saii had tried before to have the bank hand over what was his, and it never ended well. With how it went this time, the public is split on whether to call him a hero or a villain. Similar stories are happening throughout Lebanon right now. Nobody's sure what will happen once the locked up cash and other resources are depleted. Number 4. The same situation. Lebanese woman Sally Hafiz lost access to her money amid the country's financial crisis. She needed cash to fund her dying sister's cancer treatment, so she robbed a bank, just like Abdallah Al-Saii. But every dollar she stole belonged to her anyway. She held up the bank with what was later reported as a toy gun and walked out with $13,000. The frustration came with the withdrawal limit. Hafiz had an urgent need for the cash and didn't have time for a prolonged standoff or a complex scheme. It was just her, a toy gun, and her own cash. Police got involved, but they ultimately released her with no charges filed. After all, she didn't put any lives in danger. The deposit limit that Hafiz faced was $800 per month, a limit placed by the federal government and not by the individual bank. Accounts funded in dollars are subjected to a seriously low exchange rate, meaning that taking out money in that form entails a significant loss. Such limits and related fees are in place to stop the public from draining the system with bank runs, like what happened at the beginning of the Great Depression in the United States. Left with no other choice, it looks like Lebanese citizens are going to have their savings one way or another, even if it means committing a crime. Number 3. The student becomes the teacher. Ross Walsh from Limerick got a scam email from Solomon Gundy, but rather than falling victim, he victimized the scammer. Solomon had wanted to bring Ross under his wing, allegedly as a business partner in stock trading. As a sort of fee for imparting his knowledge of the field, Solomon wanted Ross to send him £1,000. Ross's response rocked the comic-loving scammer. He attached proof of payment via PayPal for £50,000. According to Ross, the paltry amount that Solomon had asked was insulting. Scoffing that Europeans like to go big in business, he sent over what turned out to be a doctored screenshot. He even went as far as urging Solomon to be quick about a reply so they could get their next move straightened out. When Solomon came back to him saying that he hadn't received the deposit, the stage was all set for Ross's counter scam. Ross told Solomon that this had happened before. The bank had frozen the account he used for the transaction due to suspicion of fraud. In order to get the bank to move things along, Ross said that Solomon would have to send him a little money for the bank to see two-way activity. He said that when this happened before, just £25 was enough to get the ball rolling. Solomon fell for it. Ross wasn't satisfied with getting the scammer to send him some cash. He insisted that the tax man may be watching their messages and made up a coded language that made things sound even more ridiculous. He got Solomon to engage in some banter in his codex. The two discussed their business plan for a bit, then Ross threw the whole scam back in Solomon's face in truly glorious fashion. He shot back a message encoded, warning Solomon against trusting bank transactions when he didn't have the cash in hand. At this point, Ross cut off communication and left the wannabe comic villain hanging. Later on, he donated the money to the Irish Cancer Society. To rub some salt in the wound, he later put out an account of what went down, along with a screenshot of an email confirming his donation. The donation amount was exactly what Solomon had sent him. If the scammer was smart enough to find Ross online after exchanging emails with him, he would see how it had all played out. Ross, for his part, said that he's not in this game to get money from scammers. Instead, he wants to waste their time and make the public aware of common scams. He expressed concern for more vulnerable crowds, such as older folk, who may fall victim to scams like the one he backfired. Number 2. Not catfished. Scammers hit Lynn Hawes, a mother of 5 from Chester, UK, with a particularly heinous grift that stole around £100,000. Once the jig was up, Lynn got with the police and exacted her revenge. Hawes met a man on Plenty of Fish who went by the name John Wilmots back in March of 2015. Bouncing back from the end of a 17-year relationship, Lynn was vulnerable. John turned on the charm, and she was instantly smitten. He appeared to be the whole package: smart, funny, and of course, a real person. When he turned up in person on a date and matched his picture on the dating service, much of Lynn's doubt evaporated then and there. Problems came about 2 months down the road. Wilmots' job, supposedly with an intelligence agency, was getting in the way of the happy couple enjoying one another's company. Wilmots was being called away to Israel in the line of duty. A month later, John told Lynn that his father had passed away, leaving a £7 million inheritance behind. The hang-up, of course, was that the money had to be split up between John and his sister, and he would have to go to Dubai to make sure it all went according to plan. A few months later, he invited her to join him and make it a couple's holiday. When Lynn arrived in Dubai, she expected to be greeted by her boyfriend. Instead of Wilmots, a man named Phil. She had expected to be helping to some degree with the estate business, but was blindsided when Phil gave her an anti-money laundering certificate and told her to keep it safe. He told her that John was going to need it because he planned to move some serious cash across borders in the near future. Phil then set her up with a hotel room, then came back the next day with a massive stash of money. He told Lynn to take some of it, but didn't specify an amount. Lynn took the cash and paid for the hotel room. The fact that it wasn't taken care of for her may have raised an eyebrow in any other situation, but Lynn didn't think twice. The next day, the certificate that she had been asked to keep safe was gone. Without it, Lynn was told that there would be no way to retrieve the transport the vast sum of cash that was set aside for John. It was obvious that the disappearance was the result of theft, but Lynn could never prove that or figure out for certain who took it. This left her no option but to replace it, something that Wilmots and Phil insisted would cost £10,000. Problem? That certificate costs only $795, or $595 if you're a member of ACAMS, the organization that oversees their issuing. Since Lynn didn't have that kind of cash on hand, she borrowed it from a friend. Not long after, she got a message from Wilmot saying that the money hadn't gotten to him yet. Instead, it was being held, with fees, by authorities. A new player showed up to back up his claim, a supposed business associate by the name of Doug Benjamin. With With all three men hounding her, Lynn fell in even deeper. Releasing that money supposedly cost another £26,000, which Lynn borrowed from her son. Lynn was still failing to see red flags at this point, but that didn't stop John from rubbing salt in the wounds. He began to call her and talk about his feelings over the whole affair. He even went as far as to mention that he was feeling suicidal over everything going on, making Lynn that much more determined to do everything in her power to set things right. Fast forward to May of 2016, Lynn was informed that the money is now released and sitting in London awaiting pickup. The catch? It's got to be converted to British pounds. Usually, this sort of transaction would take the conversion fee out of the amount being converted. In this case, the fee had to be paid up front. According to Wilmots, he couldn't access his bank from where his job had taken him. Lynn cashed out her life insurance to foot the bill to the tune of £350,000. At this point, Lynn herself was becoming suicidal. She didn't see any possible end to the situation and thought she'd continue to bleed herself dry financially and emotionally till she had nothing left. She was distancing herself from her family because she didn't want to tell them what was going on. In September of that year, Lynn somehow scraped together another £9,000 and was about to meet up with Benjamin to throw more money down the tube. She was met at the door by police, who had been tipped off by her son that she was being victimized. She turned them away, saying all was well. Lynn continued to believe in her mysterious lover until he called her up later that same day. He wanted to check up on her. The sinister fraudster knew he was slowly killing his golden calf and wanted to try and give her a morale boost. Instead, he got asked where he was and answered Israel. The phone number he was calling from was registered in the UK. Lynn didn't want to believe that she had been scammed, but she couldn't make the evidence point any other way. She made up her mind and contacted the police. She told them everything and asked their help in busting up the fraud network she was caught in. They obliged, and she set up a meeting with Doug. When Doug showed up, expecting to receive £27,000, he received a shiny pair of handcuffs instead. He didn't put up a fight in court, but he never revealed the identities of his collaborators. Ajibola Dowdu, the man who had played Doug in the scheme, got 48 months in jail. The other two partners are still at large at the time of this video. Lynn stated in court that she was made to feel special, and she knows that John and his accomplices are still out there. She's certain that there are more fraudsters in on this and other similar schemes, and she wants them caught before they can do this to anybody else. Before we get to number one, if you love these stories about how people fought back, definitely stay on this video to watch our previous release for more stories about people fighting back. Turning the tables. If you know who Ben Fordham is, you probably won't be surprised to hear that he messed with a scammer in such grand fashion that she actually started to catch feelings for him. Then he ghosted her. The prolific journalist and 2GB host has no shortage of wit, and he let it all out on Tina, a scammer who reached out on WhatsApp. It all started with her requesting a tour of the Outback and pretending to get his identity mixed up in the process. In this kind of situation, mostly anybody else would either clarify the mix-up and fall for the scam, or just block the scammer and be done with the whole affair. Fordham took the more unique approach. Fordham constructed a fake identity for the scammer. She didn't just believe him, she started to really like what she heard, at least enough to risk compromising her livelihood. Fordham's alias, Robbo, was a rugged divorcee from the land down under who had survived a kangaroo attack, among other scary Australian things. He gave Tina all the details she asked for and offered her a tour. Their conversation veered beyond the bounds of professionalism before long. Naturally, wife Jody Spears was in on the whole thing and having a good laugh. Fordham swept Tina up in the fantasy, and she decided to call Robbo on her personal number to cash in a promised ride around Bork. At that point, Fordham dropped contact. The scammer, probably heartbroken, did the same. These people wouldn't just lay down to the injustices they faced. Find out exactly how they fought back, starting with number 6, Scam the Scammer. When Jean, a 73-year-old Long Island grandmother, received a call from someone impersonating her grandson, she knew she was being scammed. The man on the phone said that he was in prison for getting in a car accident while drunk driving. He said he needed his grandma to come through with thousands of dollars in bail money. So, Jean decided to scam the scammer. She acted like she believed the lie and continuously fielded calls from several different men pretending to be her grandson. In another phone call, a different man said he was her grandson's lawyer who needed $8,000 to bail him out of jail. Jean continued to play along. She said she would hand over the money if someone came to pick it up from her house. Jean called the police to have them ready when the scammer came to her front door. As soon as he arrived at Jean's home, she opened the door and handed him an envelope filled with paper towels. Just as he turned to leave, the Nassau County police officers tackled him to the ground and placed him under arrest. It was all recorded on Jean's doorbell camera. The suspect turned out to be Joshua Estrella Gomez. He was charged with attempted grand larceny in the 3rd degree. Jean appeared in the headlines as the cool, crime-fighting grandma whose crime-stopping skills may have been aided by her 20-year career as a 911 dispatcher. Number 5. No Sundays off. Marie-Jean Pierre, a 60-year-old woman from Miami, won the best retirement savings she could have asked for after winning a lawsuit against her former employer. Pierre worked at the Conrad Hotel for over 10 years as a dishwasher. She started at the Hilton-owned hotel in 2006 with one of the least fun jobs you can get in hospitality. But she drew the line when her boss refused to let her have Sundays off to attend church. Pierre told her boss that she's a member of the Soldiers of Christ Club, a Catholic missionary group that helps the poor. But the Conrad Hotel didn't care. In 2015, Pierre's boss ignored her request for Sundays off. For a few weeks, Pierre's co-workers traded shifts with her so that she could go to church. But that was only going to work for so long before her co-workers couldn't help accommodate her. Eventually, she missed 6 straight weeks of her Sunday shift and was terminated. Pierre filed a lawsuit with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission against the Conrad Hotel on the grounds that they violated the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which protects workers from discrimination on the basis of race, religion, sex, or nationality. Pierre said that her bosses retaliated against her refusal to work on Sundays and created a hostile work environment that eventually led to her termination. A federal jury ruled in her favor and ordered the hotel to pay $21 million in damages, plus an additional $35,000 in missed wages and $500,000 for emotional pain and anguish. But there's a cap on punitive damages awarded in federal court, so Pierre couldn't receive the full $21 million she was entitled to. While it may not be the full amount, she'll get at least $500,000. Besides the money, Pierre's lawyer was hopeful that this verdict will set a precedent for future employers who don't want to accommodate their workers' beliefs. The Conrad Hotel released a statement in response to the verdict saying that they were disappointed in how the case panned out, but that they planned on filing an appeal. At the end of the statement, they reiterated that the Conrad Hotel is a safe and welcoming place for everyone, just not the Soldiers for Christ. Number 4. Out for revenge. Acacia Udino, a divorcee from Arizona, was looking for love when she received a Facebook message from a stranger saying, "What's up, beautiful?" It wasn't like Acacia to respond to messages like that, but something about Will Jackson interested her. They had mutual friends, so she was less suspicious. She messaged him back, and they started a relationship over the next few weeks that involved constant calling, texting, and FaceTiming. When a close friend ditched their Christmas plans, Jackson offered to buy her a plane ticket to Los Angeles to take her mind off of things. She agreed. Jackson purchased the boarding pass. But when she got to the airport, airline staff told her that the ticket wasn't valid. When she called Jackson, he insisted that the tickets were good. The flight was boarding soon. In a pinch, Jackson told Udino to buy a new ticket, and he promised to reimburse her. Udino arrived in LA late that night, and Jackson picked her up at the airport. He took her to the movies and seemed even better than he was on the phone. The next morning, he cooked her a full breakfast of bacon, eggs, and grits. Then he drove her back to the airport. He texted her on Sunday just to say good morning, but the next day, she woke up to see $3,000 missing from her bank account. The bank statement listed charges from a fast food restaurant, a transfer of $2,500, and an airline ticket from Dallas to LA. Udino immediately had a feeling that Jackson was the culprit. When she tried to reach him, she realized that he blocked her from texts and calls. Between 2002 and 2012, William Howard Jackson accumulated 75 charges in 3 different counties, scamming the women he dated. About half the charges were felonies, including fraudulent use of a credit card and grand theft. His public defender said it was one of the longest rap sheets he'd ever seen. But by 2014, Jackson's exes and victims found each other on Facebook and started started networking. They created awareness about Jackson's crimes on social media, reaching out to current and former girlfriends, and sometimes even their parents. In January 2019, Jackson convinced yet another woman to fly out to him in Los Angeles. He asked her to cover the cost of a rental car since his card had apparently been declined. She said yes, but the next morning, Jackson left her and drove away in the car that was under her name. She called the rental car company to see if he returned the car, which he didn't. When another of Jackson's victims saw the stolen rental car parked outside his house, the police finally had enough evidence to make an arrest. Finally, Jackson was in police custody. In May 2019, Jackson faced 2 felony theft charges for the rental car. There were only 8 victims on the complaint, but nearly 50 came forward with combined losses of more than $200,000. Jackson's first attorney, Chanel Shackelford, quit after his check bounced. The judge ordered a public defender and set his bail at $300,000. There's a whole lot more to this story, including how amateur detective Acacia took this guy down. We'll just say, when it's personal, women become better detectives than the CIA. Click the link here to check out the whole story. Number 3. Towed out to dry. Vincent Cardinale didn't use a stereotypical robbing technique. He used his tow truck. It worked for him for a while until he was slapped with 99 felony counts of fraud, perjury, and extortion. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was previously awarded $1 million by a South County commissioner who took his side in all but 2 of the many lawsuits, ignoring Cardinale's blatant scamming. In the scam, Cardinale and 2 accomplices towed cars unlawfully, then sold them without telling owners. Then, they sued the owners in small claims court for towing and storage fees, often using false information to strengthen their argument. Sometimes, Cardinale sued people who didn't even own the vehicle he towed. He obtained judgments, emptied bank accounts, and even encouraged the arrest of anyone who didn't pay his fraudulent fees. Since he never told the owners about the pending car sale and the lawsuits, he quickly won default judgments against his clueless victim. One victim, Ruben Magos, received a notice of a default judgment in small claims court from B&C Towing for towing fees. He went to court to explain that he didn't own the vehicle, but the judge said it was too late and he owed $2,500. When Magos tried to explain that he was never served with the lawsuit, the courts ignored him. Magos was required to give Cardinale his bank information and set up payment arrangements. Cardinale even placed a lien on the young couple's dwindling bank account. There were 12 more people in court that day who denied ever owning the vehicle in question. One victim had to tell her husband that she didn't have grocery money because of the payment she had to make to B&C Towing. Cardinale mostly targeted middle and lower class people, many of whom were struggling to make ends meet or could hardly speak English. He sued retired San Jose firefighter John Castro Jr. and his father. When Cardinale realized the elder Castro died, he penciled in Jr. next to the father's name on the DMV paperwork for the 1981 BMW. Another victim was an Air Force major executing missions in Afghanistan. His security clearance was threatened when the lawsuit caused his credit score to decline. Basically, Vincent Cardinale was not a cool dude. Things started going downhill in 2005 when Cardinale sued State Farm Insurance for back fees on 2 cars the company didn't own. When State Farm didn't win the case, they appealed and brought in attorney Gregory Adler as a witness. He worked for an online auction company that sold the vehicles in question on behalf of State Farm. Adler got suspicious when he noticed just how many lawsuits B&C Towing filed. He started documenting evidence of fraud and helped several victims subpoena DMV records to prove their innocence. Above all, Adler couldn't understand how the city commissioner, Gregory Salvador, didn't notice a pattern in Cardinale's scamming. Salvador should have noticed that all of the defendants had the same story of never owning the vehicle in question or being served with a lawsuit, but he couldn't be bothered. So, Adler decided to go after him. In 2007, he sent a formal complaint about the city commissioner to presiding judge Catherine Gallagher. For the Cardinales, scamming was the family business. Cardinale's son, Vincent Cardinale Jr., was the owner of B&C Towing and was sentenced to 8 years in prison after pleading no contest 59 felony charges, including attempted grand theft, perjury, embezzlement, and many more. Cardinale's daughter, Rosemary, was sentenced to 4 to 6 months in jail on charges of obstructing justice, grand theft, and perjury. Her husband, Gregory, was sentenced to 150 days of electronic monitoring for attempted grand theft. Number 2. Fool me twice. In 2018, in Paterson, New Jersey, two 21-year-olds tried to scam grandparents for cash. It worked for a while, and they even earned $10,000 from their scamming, until one grandpa outsmarted them. Edgar Trejo Tavares and Kevlin Garcia called a 93-year-old man from Arkansas who chose to remain anonymous, claiming to be his grandson's attorney. They said his grandson was involved in a drunk driving accident and was hospitalized with a broken nose. They asked him for $50,000 for his grandson's bail. To add some drama to the story, the fake attorneys told the grandpa that the other person involved in the crash was a pregnant woman who is now at risk of losing her baby. They told the grandfather not to tell anyone about the phone call or the accident because the grandson was embarrassed and didn't want word getting back to his parent. Another man called the grandfather and negotiated the bail down to $3,500. He told the elderly man to mail the bail money to an address in Bordentown Township. The grandfather didn't fall for it this time. He knew better, since he was similarly scammed before. The elderly man called the police to let them know that he was being scammed. Bordentown Township police involved the U.S. Postal Inspection Service to arrange for a controlled delivery of the cash. The police wanted to catch them in the act. Officers watched as Garcia and Trejo Tavares accepted the shipping envelope from a postal carrier. Then they pulled the pair over and found the envelope filled with cash and an additional $10,000 from other people they scammed. Trejo Tavares also had a fake New Jersey driver's license and was arrested on the spot. Garcia was released pending court appearance, and Trejo Tavares was additionally charged with possessing a false government document and was jailed in Burlington County until the detention hearing. Number 1. The cab fare. British expat Joshua Fox was on vacation in Sydney, Australia, when suddenly he found himself as the acting detective when he became the victim of fraud. Fox is a content producer for shows such as Married at First Sight. He was enjoying a night out in Sydney when he realized thousands of dollars were missing from his bank account. That night, Fox went to an ATM to withdraw $300 and then received a warning that someone used his card to spend more than $1,000 at a tobacco shop. The scammers tried to use the card again for another $1,000 purchase. But by this point, Fox blocked the card and the transaction failed. He contacted both the police and his bank, neither of whom helped. When Fox reported the fraudulent charges to Commonwealth Bank, they told him it could take up to 45 days to get his money back. Not wanting to wait a full month and a half to get his $1,300 back, he took matters into his own hands. Fox set up his bedroom as a personal CSI office, with evidence hung up on the walls. He bought a portable siren for himself just in case he needed to chase down the scammers himself. He started by retracing his steps from that night. It started with a night at Frankie's Pizza in the Sydney Central Business District. Fox documented the whole thing on Instagram, with his followers showing support for his journey. He combed through his October bank statement, and one thing stood out to him. He had a receipt for a $30 taxi trip that was never charged to his card. Finally, he put it together. The taxi driver that night told him that he doesn't accept Apple Pay and can't do contactless payment, so Fox had to pay with his debit card and punch in every number. The machine must have saved his card details, which the driver then used to go on a spending spree. When Fox brought his findings to the police, they refused to look into the driver. They wouldn't even take the receipt. Instead, they told Fox that the case would probably be referred to another station closer to the tobacco shop where the first fraudulent $1,000 purchase occurred. Fox decided to go to the tobacco shop himself, hoping the driver would come in to make another transaction. He never did. Eventually, New South Wales police said they opened an investigation into the scammer. As soon as Fox's fraud-finding journey gained traction on social media, the Commonwealth Bank stepped up to say that they are working as quickly as possible to reimburse Fox. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you think is a bigger problem: scam calls and texts or scams on social media.